welcome to the Let Go, Let God podcast. I'm your host, Erika Ray, and I'm super excited that you have tuned in to week 2 of my series where I'm talking about top leaders in the Bible. So today we've got a really exciting leader. We're going to be talking about Moses. But first, I kind of just want to chit chat about how the week's going. We just got into October, my favorite month. It's the start of all of the fun activities. Me and both my brothers, we were all born in October, so it's always just a big celebration all month. And then you have, of course, the start of fall. Well, I guess technically fall starts in September, but all the fall activities in Arizona start happening in October because the weather gets nicer. And we just had some big storms, but now it's been really nice weather, so that's really cool. I'm going to the pumpkin patch on Friday, which I'm super excited about. There's this pumpkin patch here, and it's like the biggest of them all. It's called Schnepp Farms. If you've never been, you should go. It's so cool. It's like off the charts fun, even as an adult. I went last year for the first time, and it was really cool. So I'm excited about going there, and I really need to book some more fall events on my calendar because I know that it always goes so fast. And then everything just kind of warps together. And then you hit Christmas and then you're like, it's New Year's. And what did I even do this season? I always love to soak it in, try to do something fall festive every single week. And then once Halloween hits, I always put up my Christmas decorations the day after Halloween. So it's almost time for Christmas in my brain and in our apartment. So, anyways, those are just kind of the weekly updates from last week whenever I posted. So, we're going to get right into it. I've got a big notebook of notes for today because I don't want to miss anything. And as you guys know, I'm trying to get better at talking about the Bible stories. I don't feel like I'm the best at it. And sometimes I have a hard time remembering what's happened and then articulating what's happening. I was one of those kids in school that had to read things like 3 or 4 times before it stuck in my brain. I was so jealous of the kids that could just read it and then they knew, or the kids that were like, "Oh yeah, I didn't even study and I got an A on this test." I'm like, I literally studied all night long and I got a C. So it's been a little bit challenging for me whenever I study the Bible because I'll have to read things and then I'll go through context and then I'll ask questions. But it's totally worth it. And now I just want to get better at articulating and remembering these stories so that they can just be ingrained in my brain and I can just pull them out at any moment. So we'll go ahead and get into it. We're going to be talking about Moses this week, and we will be in Exodus. We'll be in chapters 3 through 14. So it's a pretty big chunk of Exodus. So we're going to start out in chapter 3 with the burning bush. A lot of you have probably heard about this, but basically what happened is an angel of the Lord appeared to Moses in a burning bush. It was a flame of fire, and the bush was not consumed by the fire, which this is already a miracle in and of itself, because if any bush caught on fire these days, it would just go down to shrub. There's no way it would stand a chance. So the burning bush not being consumed is already such a miracle. And an angel came to Moses and started speaking to him and told him that he would bring the children of Israel out of Egypt. Moses was pretty shocked by this, and he doubted his abilities to be able to do this. He kind of was like, am I really the man for this job? I don't think so. And God reassured him that he would be with him and that he would go with the elders, which there's a verse in here. I should have wrote it down, but I did not. But it talks about how God let him go with the elders to kind of have that extra support, which is so sweet of him because he knew, he wouldn't want to just go on his own. So Moses was doubting himself, but God reassured him and he sent the elders with him to go ahead and do this. So Moses was supposed to ask the king of Egypt to take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to sacrifice to the Lord, which essentially means to worship the Lord. So he was supposed to go to the king and ask if they could take some time off. 3 days. That's a lot of time. Imagine going to your boss and being like, hey, I'm going to go take these people and we're going to go take a 3-day worship trip in the wilderness. Your boss would probably be like, what? What are you going to do? 3 days? 3 days is a lot. So the point of all of this worship trip was to restore right relationship between God and his people, because there was just so many things that were going on, so much corruption. And so God wanted to restore all of that. So he was like, hey, I'm going to send you guys out and I want you to go worship, get your minds right. I don't know if you guys have ever had a day where you're just feeling anxious and worried and overwhelmed, and then you go and you take some time, take some deep breaths, spend some time with the Lord, and then you're like, oh, all is right in the world again, and my problems are not that big. So he wanted to do this to show the seriousness of getting things right with the people. So Moses was worried that the people wouldn't believe that the Lord actually showed up to speak to him. He was worried that that was going to happen whenever he went to go and tell the people that they needed to come and worship. I think sometimes when we're called to do big things, we're like, oh my gosh, is that person going to think I'm crazy, or like they're not going to believe me? And that's exactly what he was thinking. He's like, there's no way they're going to believe that an angel came to me in a burning bush and told me to get the people and to go worship for 3 days. There's just no way. Like, when you think about that in today's day and age, it's like, what? It's pretty crazy. So, of course, he was feeling doubtful and worried. So, he was worried they wouldn't believe him or listen to him at all, for that matter. So, he told Moses to take his staff and throw it on the ground. And when he did that, it became a serpent. And that's pretty cool. He threw his staff on the ground, it became a serpent, and this was to be a sign for the people so that they would know that he was from God, because again, you can't just take a stick and throw it on the ground and it's going to become a snake. So he wanted to give him this miraculous act to show the people if he needed it. So God said that this sign would help the people believe. And at this time, Moses was really getting in his head, and he claimed that he was slow of speech. And some people say he had a speech impediment. Do we really, really know? All we know is that he was slow of speech. There was something that was kind of keeping him from being able to feel confident in going and fully speaking for the Lord. And whenever Moses talks about how he feels slow in speech, the Lord reminds him of his creator and who created his mouth. And whoever created our mouths can give us the ability to do literally anything, because the Lord created us and our mouths. So God, being so gracious and kind and sweet, he actually sent his brother Aaron to speak on his behalf. So we have God who spoke to Moses. Moses was going to speak to Aaron, which is really cool because he knew that he needed a helper, and he let Aaron come alongside him. So when they went out to talk to the people, all of the elders of Israel believed. So that was kind of chapters 3 and 4. We're going to go into chapter 5 now. So this chapter is called Making Bricks Without Straw. So Moses and Aaron go and confront Pharaoh. Pharaoh increases the Israelites' burdens because he doesn't know who God is, and he thinks they're taking the people away from their work. He thinks that they're using their religious acts to be lazy, essentially. He's like, no, I'm not letting you do that. This is just an excuse for you guys not to have to work. So he ends up taking away the people's straw to make bricks. And for reference, I had to look this up. Straw helped bind the clay together so the bricks would dry properly. So him taking away the straw is going to double their workload because now they have to go and find the straw themselves. Before it was just provided for them. So the Israelites turn on Moses and Aaron, and Moses definitely starts to question God. He's like, what the heck, God? These people are getting mad at me. They're turning on me because of what you want me to do. And the people are like, Moses, this is all your fault. Now we have double the work to do, so we ain't about it. So in that moment, God reminds Moses of his promises, and he tells him, I'm going to deliver you. You have to trust me. And then God mentions that he's going to harden Pharaoh's heart. Also, for reference, Moses was 80 years old at this point, and Aaron was 83. So they were not young, they were older, and God still used them. And so I think that that's just a really sweet reminder that God can use us at any age. We're never too young or too old, but it's just a cool picture. I didn't know that that's how old they were whenever they went through this whole journey. So Pharaoh was not having it. So Aaron decided to cast down his staff before Pharaoh, and as it should, it turned into a serpent. And then Pharaoh was like, okay, magicians, come over here. He gets his magicians and he tells them to do the same thing. And the magicians throw their staff down and it actually does turn into a serpent. But Aaron's staff swallows up the magician's staff because it's from God. So that was him using his sign to potentially get Pharaoh to believe in God, because before that, Pharaoh was like, I don't know who this God is. No, you're just trying to get out of all of your work that you need to do. But mind you, God told Moses and Aaron that he was going to harden Pharaoh's heart. So his heart is still hardened. He does not let the people go. And so then we go into chapter 7. Chapter 7, verse 14 starts the 10 plagues. So there's 10 plagues that happen, and Pharaoh's heart is continuously hardened through all of them. So I'm going to go over the 10 plagues. So the first one is that water turns to blood. Also, as I'm going over these, think about if these things actually happened. Just think about how wild and scary that would be, and supernatural, really. So the first thing is that water turned to blood. Imagine if you look at the ocean and it's just blood red. That would be terrifying. The second, there was an infiltration of frogs. That would be so gross. Then there was an infiltration of gnats. That's number 3. Number 4, an infiltration of flies. I don't know about you, but flies are like one of the most irritating things. Number 5, all of the Egyptian livestock die. That's a big thing because they need their livestock. Number 6, boils start to break out on the Egyptian people. I know we don't like having zits. Imagine having boils all over our skin. Number 7, hail. Number 8, locusts break out. Number 9, darkness. And then number 10, death of the firstborn. So these are all very, very intense. And throughout all of them, Pharaoh does not let the people go. His heart is still hardened. He's like, no, 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 no. I don't know about you, but I think after the water turned to blood, I'd be a little freaked out. I think after the staff became the serpent, I think I would be freaked out. But it's crazy. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, I wish I could be in their minds back in the day and know what they were thinking, like Moses, Aaron, Pharaoh, just out of pure curiosity. So anyways, after the 10 plagues, we jump over to Exodus 12, and we're talking about the death of the firstborn. And so this is the whole significant event called the Passover. So for the Passover, this is when God tells the people, every man shall take a lamb, kill it, and take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. They shall eat the flesh that night. So basically, the Lord was going to pass over the houses, and he wanted all of his people to be safe. So he told them to kill a lamb and put the blood on the doorpost. And so whenever he did the Passover, he would know not to harm the firstborn of the child or the animal in that house. And yes, it was the firstborn of humans and of animals as well. So another thing he mentioned was don't keep any leftovers, they have to be burnt. And that night, the Lord passed through Egypt, and the firstborn were killed, and the houses with blood were passed over and not affected by the plague at all. So at this point, Pharaoh calls Moses and Aaron and tells them to go and serve the Lord and to bless him. So at this point, you're like, oh my gosh, Pharaoh finally believes. He believes in God and his heart is softened. No, that's not what happened. So I'll get to that though. But you think his heart is softened, but it's not. After that, Moses and Aaron and the people leave, and they are led by a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire by night, which again, so cool. Just imagine you're walking around, you're following a cloud during the day, and then at night you're following fire. That would be so wild. I don't even know where my mind would be going, because just thinking about these things, it's like, what? But I don't know if you've ever slowed down and you're like, okay, what am I actually reading? It's pretty crazy, but it's just so cool. It just shows how cool God is. And I love how he has these stories for us to read and look back on, because it's so cool. So we go over to Exodus 14, which is the last chapter that I'm going to be talking about. This is crossing the Red Sea. So you think Pharaoh's good, he let the people go. But then when Pharaoh was told that the people actually fled, he was upset and wondering what he had done to let Israel go from serving them. He's like, oh no, I regret my decision. What did I do? Even though I told them to go and serve the Lord, why did I do that? So he got his chariot ready and he took his army and he went after the Israelites. So the Egyptians are all ready to fight and take down the Israelites. The Israelites started freaking out and said, oh my gosh, like we should have just stayed serving the Egyptians rather than like dying in the wilderness. These people are going to come after us. They're going to get us. So once again, the people are doubting God and they're doubting Moses, and they're just wondering what are they doing? I don't know if you guys have ever been in a situation where you're feeling confident. You're like, yes, I'm feeling led to do this. And then you start doing it, and then you hit a rut or a challenge and you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And you just start to freak out. And then you're like, I should have just done that. It would have been easier. I mean, there's so many instances of this where maybe you take a risk and you take a new job, or there's something that happens with, you're like, I decide to have a child, and oh my gosh, like, of course you wouldn't regret having your child, but you don't realize all the things that come with that. Or maybe you decide to move to a new place and you're like, this is going to be so fun and exciting. And then you get there and you're like, what have I done? I have no friends here. I have no job. I used my savings to move here. But deep down, you knew God was calling you to do it. And so that's what you have to hold on to. And that's what these people did not hold on to in that moment. But it's okay, because God is gracious and he helped them. So the Israelites were freaking out. Moses told them, don't freak out. Don't fear. The Lord is going to fight for you. And so the Lord at that point told Moses to lift up his staff and stretch out his hand over the sea to deliver it. Again, just imagine this picture. I mean, I'm sure if you went to Sunday school as a child, you saw pictures of Moses like holding the staff and then the waters being on both sides of you, just clear pathway through. It's crazy to think about that actually happening. So Moses lifted his staff, and then the waters lifted up on both sides of him. And the Israelites were able to cross over safely. And then the Egyptians were like, oh, let's go. And so they tried to follow, but they panicked, and all their chariot wheels got all turned and clogged up, and heavy, so they couldn't drive them. And then they realized, oh my gosh, they do actually have the Lord on their side, and they tried to flee. They tried to get out of there. And then the Lord told Moses, okay, stretch out your hand over the sea again. And he did. And the water came back upon the Egyptians, and not a single one of them remained. So, in this, one of the questions that I had was, okay, so did Pharaoh die too? And it wasn't stated clearly anywhere, but it can be assumed that he also died, because it said none of them remained, and Pharaoh was a part of them. So they all got eaten up by the water. And then at that point, Israel was like, okay, we saw God's great power, and they feared the Lord, and they believed in Moses again. So Moses is pretty cool. He really, really helps the people with a lot of things. And he was such a servant for the Lord. And even though he doubted and he feared, the Lord gave him the proper tools. He gave him Aaron, first of all, as a resource, and then he gave him the strength to continue to help the people get through the story. And something, I don't know if you caught on to this, but at the beginning, Aaron is the one that performs the staff and the serpent miracle with Pharaoh. And then at the end, Moses is the one who actually uses his staff to clear out the waters, which I think is so cool, because sometimes when we're really scared to do something, but we know God's called us to do it, God gives us the resources, and then he kind of gives us a little cushion. He's like, okay, I'm going to give you this little buddy to have, or I'm going to help you out with this. And then once we get more confident, he's like, okay, you can do it. And I feel like that's what happened with Moses, where he gave him Aaron as a little buddy. And then at the end, he's like, okay, you got this. You can do it yourself. And I just think that that is super, super cool. This whole story is a lot, and I read it multiple times, and there's so much meat in it. And I yet again managed to do it in less than 30 minutes, which is why you should go read it for yourself and create that mental picture and see what God wants to show you in that story, because I think there's so many lessons in this story, so many things that we can learn like now in our everyday lives, where we can feel so doubtful and worried and not really have faith in God's plan for our lives, and kind of even maybe we've even backed out at times. But I think this whole story shows that the pursuit will pay off, and just continuing to listen to God will definitely pay off. And I really wanted to share a story of a moment where I felt like God has kind of done this in my life. So I will share something that is nothing like this story, but it's kind of my own little personal battle that I have endured and encountered. And it's all the lessons from this story. I can totally use them in this story that I'm about to tell you, and then just so many other things in life for sure. So back in 2023, whenever I started the podcast, there was so many things going through my mind. I remember sitting at coffee with my friend Tamara, and we were talking about the podcast, and I was sharing this big idea with her. And it was crazy, because I had never had this passion and desire and drive to do any type of creative passion project. But I remember it was the most creative I had ever been in my life. And I remember sitting there telling her about what I was going to do. And she was so supportive and just like, yeah, girl, you do it. And I honestly didn't even really think twice about it. And then after that, I had gone and sat by myself and started working on the podcast. And I remember I was sitting at a different coffee shop and had my little notebook, and I went through and I was like, I just wrote down pages and pages and pages of ideas for this podcast. And that is not from me, that is from God. So it was lit by this fire. And of course, I had an encouraging friend, and the Lord put all of these creative sparks in my brain. But then, you start creating, and something that I always would struggle with in the past is a lot of obsessive thoughts. And when you put something out there, especially online, it's typically out there forever and people can save it and all those things unless you delete everything. But once you put it out there, people can get a hold of it and then they can save it and all those things. And so initially I was like, had this mini freak out the night before I launched my podcast of, oh my gosh, this is going to be out there. What if it's not good? And then the weight of like preaching or talking about God and the Bible, of course, I don't ever want to lead anybody astray. And so then you start second guessing yourself and you're like, is it good enough? And in the past, whenever I used to really struggle with obsessive thoughts, it would really keep me from doing anything. I would always start things and never finish them. And that's also why I had a really hard time in school, because I would start doing something and I would get it and then I would get confused and I'd be like, forget it. It doesn't matter. I need perfection. And so many things, like there was just so many things that go into the OCD thoughts and tendencies. And so it was wild, and only by the grace of God that I was able to start something up like this podcast, because you have to do a lot of prepping. You have to figure out a lot of things. I mean, not even just a podcast, but any project that you're doing, there's a lot that goes into it. And you can really get in your head like, is this good enough? And I really struggled with that. And I feel like the Lord brought me through that. And so I had this freak out. But then I remember him telling me like, Erika, I have called you through this and I'm going to see you through it. And in that moment, I was like, okay, you know what? It doesn't matter, because I'm doing this for God. And if I reach one person, if one person gets saved because of this, that is all worth it. And I find so much joy in doing it. And like I've said multiple times, it's really helping me learn, because it's helping me study and keep me accountable to teaching these different things. And so there's so many benefits to all of it. And first and foremost, I just want to remember that I'm doing it for the Lord and not for man. And in that, I need to ask the Lord for guidance. But I say all of that because I had a Moses moment where I was like, I'm not capable. I have all these thoughts in my brain. I can't do it. And then the Lord's like, no, I'm gonna deliver you into this. And there's been times where I've had to take breaks and stop, because those seasons of my life, I just feel like God wasn't calling me to speak. And I don't want to just speak to speak. I only want it to be from the Lord. So I think that that is just one example in my life. And I think that having this podcast for the past couple of years has been very special to me. And I really think that it's given me a lot of confidence to do other things and help me push through a lot of challenges and barriers and all the things. And I know that it's what God's called me to do. And so that's really what keeps me going in the midst of all of it. So I think that that is just like a little personal story that I wanted to share, with tying all of it in back to Moses. So my encouragement, and I will end on this, is if you feel like God is calling you to do something and you're terrified of doing it, pray first. Ask for encouragement and prayers, but be careful who you speak to, because, you know, there's some people that may not speak life into that, and you can't control that, but that's why you want to pray first. And God may send you a person as an encouragement or some type of sign, but pray first. And if it's from the Lord, or you think it's from the Lord, go for it, and then he'll totally direct your steps after that. Because there's been so many times where I'm like, I think this is from God, and then I go into it and I'm like, that was not from God, but that's okay, I got redirected. So last little thing I'll say is, I remember one of my mentors, she was talking to me about this analogy where, you know, when you're driving somewhere and you have your maps up and then you take a wrong turn or you miss a turn, whatever it is, then it just reroutes you. It doesn't just end, right? So I think that in our lives, we can think about how we're just traveling on a map, and every time we take a wrong turn or we miss our turn, then God is just redirecting us. He's not shutting us down and being like, okay, you know what? Nope, the map is closing. And I just love thinking about me in a car just driving, and then I'm like, oh, wrong turn, redirecting. And that kind of just makes me giggle and keeps me going. And then another car analogy is, God can't do anything with a parked car. If you're just sitting there, he can't do anything with it. And so just start driving. Even if you don't know where you're driving, like I'm sure a lot of you guys have gotten on the road and you're like, I don't know, I'm just going to go for a drive and see where it takes me. I've done that before. And then, you end up somewhere really cool, or you just get a good drive and you get some good thoughts going. So there can be so many things that God wants to do and use you for, and you just have to have an open heart and an open mind and be willing. And it's okay if you're scared and doubtful, because Moses sure was, and he still did amazing things. He's one of the best leaders in the Bible, and that is why I chose to do him for number 2. I cannot remember who number 3 is. Wait, I can check right now, so you guys can have a little sneak peek. Ooh, okay. Top 3 leader is going to be David. He's going to be my number 3. And man, he's got a good story. So I hope you guys will tune in again next week. Thank you for watching. I hope that I made sense. If I didn't, I'm really sorry. Go read Exodus 3 through 14. Bye-bye.